Welcome back everyone. Thank you for joining me in my garden studio with yet another little project. As most of you know, Miss Rose Divided is famous for all the velvet flowers we created many years ago. It's a personal love of ours. We've always loved beautiful French and Italian millinery flowers. They're beautifully made and they were made for the couture ladies of the time. You don't see them very much anymore. That time of wearing corsages over your shoulder made out of beautiful velvets and organza sadly have gone. I mean, you still see them at all the beautiful French and Italian runways, but they're very expensive and it's sort of a dying art. So when we recreated these beautiful flowers, I mean, they're just so forgiving. You can squash them, you can pull them apart, you can try to make them look a little bit more ragged and vintage, but you really can't destroy them. So don't be intimidated by using things like this. We've designed them to be able to be used and used over and over again. And when you get sick of a particular design, as fashions come and go, you can actually pull them all apart and do something completely different. But for today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do a lamp rose brooch, and it's really simple. I get asked, this is one of the most popular workshops that I did at all the craft fairs across Australia and America. You start with a very plain lampshade. Now this obviously is one in very good condition, but if you have one that's got marks and horrible tears, you can very easily reconstruct it. Even if you just got old doilies and stretch them across the front, you tuck it in, you can put another doily there, another piece of lace, or you can just simply use old bits of lace, beautiful pieces of embroidery, and you can create a whole base to start on with. But for today's project, it's going to be fairly simple. So this is what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming at a very loose, beautiful, posy, sort of like that, continuing on. So for this exercise, you have to decide where you want it and how much of it you want. Now, when you get a kit of ours, you will have enough to do at least one project and probably 1.5, because you might decide that you just want to really use just the hydrangea, or the hydrangea and the rose, or just the rose. So there's so many different variations of this. You might find in your room, if it's very simple and quite a modern room, that just a touch of floral adds that romanticness about it. Or you might have a room that's very shabby chic and you really love the full-on flowers and lace, and it's all beautiful and all of it looks stunning. So once I've worked out what I'm going to do, and I'm working with this pale palette at the moment, I'll show you a dark one in a minute, I could glue straight to the lampshade. But what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how I create a lamp brooch with these roses so that you can pin it to the lampshade and then you can use it in other things. So I start with leaves as a background, and these are the hydrangea leaves. Now I have my trusty wire cutters. You need those. You can use scissors, but you'll blunt them and ruin them, so what's the point? I just get a really good pair of wire cutters. I cut the stems off. You don't need those at all anymore. Just getting them all ready. The important thing is to have your flowers ready to go. So there's my little pile of leaves. You won't see that, that'll be in the background. I've got some smaller leaves that I cut up just before, they're there. And then I look at this and I go, right, I'll take off the ribbon because that's not necessary. You could use that later as an olive green accent. I just pull that off. And I want to do it really quite simply, and I want it to look like a freshly picked posy. A lovely posy that you've just picked from the garden and happen to have just stuck on a lampshade. So then what I do is I do a little patchwork of leaves. Now, I always talk about my glue gun. I'll make it quick because a lot of you will probably know how to use a glue gun and you'll find this a bit boring. But for people starting off that have never used a glue gun, it is very important. So if you wouldn't just mind listening to this for a little bit. So I use a big glue gun, mainly because these glue sticks are big, and the little gun with the little sticks takes a lot of glue when you're doing big, bold things like this. So I use the big glue gun for pretty much everything. I have a finer nozzle. You don't need a lot of glue. It depends on the bulkiness of the flower and what you're gluing down. The trick with a glue gun is make sure it's hot. You plug it in and you shouldn't be able to leave your hand on there, because if it's not hot enough and you press this trigger, you will break the gun, and that's a bit of a waste. So starting, I'm just creating this overlapped leaf background. You could do it with a piece of calico, and I'm just creating a background to glue these flowers onto. So just a bit haphazard. When you get the kit, you actually get a diagram of how to do this, because the whole plan is to glue that to that and that to that. So I'm just creating a background for gluing onto. So we'll see how that goes. I can always add more leaves later. I'm not even going to bother taking those stems off. You could cut them all off with the wire cutters, but I don't think it matters. So I'm just spreading them out, making sure those leaves look beautiful, and then I'm going to glue it straight down. So I put glue on the back there, quite a bit of glue because this is a bit of a bulky, and then I just hold it there. Be very careful not to put your fingers straight on the glue because you will burn yourself and you don't want to do that. So I just hold it down, and while I'm waiting I just spread these out so that all their little pretty faces face upward. They're all on wire, they've all got little middles, so you can just rearrange them as you go like that. You can cut bits off if you want to take one and put it somewhere else. So that's pretty much done, and you can see what I've done there. Now with this, I'm going to cut these stems off here. So with that, there's no wire there, so I just cut it off with with scissors. So those stems can just go in the bin. And then here I'm just arranging some leaves, and you've got those beautiful dropped rosebuds that you want to drop that way, not up that way, but this way, so they hang beautifully. And I'm just rearranging them because my posy is going to go across the lamp like that. So then I just once again get this out of the way. You don't want glue over everything else. I just put glue on the back there, and then I hold it down over the stems. These leaves can be moved around, so you can see I'm just holding it down while I rearrange, and you can also see that I haven't glued everything flat down hard. It's all still very springy and posy-ish and very loose. You don't want a stiff, ugly posy. You want it to look like you've just picked it from the garden, as I said before. And then, as you can see, this is going across at an angle like that. If you wanted to stop right there, that would almost be enough, but I'm just going to add a little bit more. So on this bit here, I'm adding some smaller leaves. I love the different layers. It just gives you a bit more interest. So one leaf there, and as you can see, I'm just pressing down lightly. I've got another leaf that I'm going to put there, and if there's a little rough edge like that, I just get my scissors and cut that back. These leaves are amazing. They're all backed. Most cheap flowers have got just a wire, and if you fiddle around with it, the leaf falls off the wire, whereas we've made sure that every single leaf is backed with another piece of cloth to keep it together. And then just a little bit of glue. You don't need a lot. As you can see, I haven't really used very much at all. That goes there. You can keep lifting it to make sure you're not gluing it to the table, because that wouldn't be much fun. And then I've got a little another little leaf there. This is a lovely craft for an afternoon when it's raining outside and you can't be outside anyway. And then you can just put some beautiful music on, make a hot cup of tea and just create. And then here I'm going to add some, just looking at the colour, maybe not that, maybe that. I'm going to add some rosebuds definitely, because rosebuds are one of my favourite things to use. They just like little Cecil Brunner roses, tight and gorgeous. And so I'm just going to put it in there. Be careful that you don't put it on yourself, the glue, because it really will burn. And you don't want a big blister, big ugly blister on your finger. It hurts quite a lot. So I'm just doing some more like that. So this is where you could cut one of these off. This is a good little trick. You could actually cut one of these off I love detail, and you can just put it in there. So once again, that little hydrangea posy bloom. I'm just putting a bit of glue, lifting that petal up and just putting it there. And then I might just use one more, because there's so many in here. There's like 36 separate blossoms and you don't need all of them. And then I'm just going to overlap that in there. Once again, just a little bit of glue. Lift up the petal. That's how easy that is. And then you decide whether you want to have a really soft bow. You can go around the corner. You could glue this on. You don't really need to glue it on though. You could actually pin it with just pearl pins. And then if you wanted to use this for something else, I'll show you. There's a beautiful mannequin here that a friend covered for me. Tootsie, if you're watching this, I love her. I call her Tootsie. You could actually have it over the edge like this. So this is this is another workshop for another time. This is a beautiful mannequin. So Tootsie covered it for me, and I add old brooches and things, but you can put a millinery corsage. You can do it that way. I rather like it that way. You can put this on a hat. You could actually have that on a headband as well. You could put it on a beautiful straw hat. But for this purpose, we'll stick to the lampshade. And as I said, when you put it on there, you can actually go around the corner. You can put it down low. You can put it up quite high. You can play around with it. You'll have a different lampshade perhaps. You won't have this lampshade. And then I usually always love to add a bow. Now this is a beautiful colour, and I just want a big floppy bow. It can be a lace bow. No, that's not. Need it to be quite big and generous. We're very particular about colours. I love all the shades blending in. You can mix it with other colours, but you've always got to have the same tone. So this is a lovely floppy bow, and I'll show you. So once again, you've got this going across, and you can decide whether or not you like it or not. So I would put it there. Whoops, there's my scissors. I love big long tails too, so I just cut across. That's not cut very well. I'll do it better later with bigger scissors. I'm almost sawing into it, but you'll get the idea. Tie it a bit tighter. And this is your lampshade. So there it is there. Tuck those around. For the sake of this, what I'll do is I'll lightly glue it on. So if I was to glue this straight onto the lampshade, this is what I would do. Just run my glue gun all along the back, not too much, leave the leaves loose, and then I put it straight onto there. It's only very light. If you were to take this off at some stage, what you do is you get a hairdryer, you hold it onto the posy, wait for the glue to melt, and then you peel it off, and then you can completely redo your lampshade and use this for something else. For practical purposes, as I said, I would use pins just to pin it on. Then you can put it on your lampshade, you can put it on a mannequin, you can put it on a basket, and then I'd have that there. So once again, you just have a little bit of glue on there. You might like the tails shorter. I tend to be a little bit generous, or very generous with most things. So if that's on a tall base, you can move that around so that you see the satin side. If that's on a tall base, which this obviously would be, you'd have this lovely trailing ribbon. And that's how easy that is to do. It's so easy and really quite gorgeous. And then you could use other colours. So I've got different variations of colours here. So look how these look amazing together. You can do the same posy. So once again, you'd use your leaves You'd put that like that, and then you would just work out where you wanted these flowers to be. You could go across like that, you could come in. There's a really lovely one here too. This is a gorgeous, another variation of colour. It's got all the beautiful antique lilacs and the mulberry colours, which are really rich. And this is another great thing too with these flowers. You can take them apart, you can use them on a basket. Just tie them with a big satin bow. Once again, you can keep going around the side. You can just get your posy that you've tied roughly together and tie it to the basket like that. If you had a stack of old books and you didn't want to use all of those flowers on there, you could then tie beautiful vintage lace around your stack of books with a big floppy bow, and then you could put a beautiful velvet rose on there. And there's just so much you can do. But that's how you would do the lampshade. Easy, beautiful. And if you get tired of it, you just simply take it off and change it all. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.